On this inaugural 2024 episode of the Young Pioneer Podcast, we're joined by YPT founder and CEO Gareth Johnson to discuss the recent return of the Least Visited Countries Tour, as well as some exciting new tours planned for this year, followed by a from-the-field interview with our local partner in the reclusive African nation of Eritrea. We've got all this and more on this episode of the Young Pioneer Podcast.
조선중앙 방송입니다.
Okay, welcome to Season 2, Episode 5 of the Young Pioneer Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Martell, and I've actually just returned from Oceania, where I was co-guiding YPT's Least Visited Countries Tour with YPT CEO and founder Gareth Johnson. It was actually our first time running the tour since COVID broke out in 2020, and it was our biggest least visited group yet. Based on the TripAdvisor feedback, I'd say it was a success. So for part one of this episode, we've recorded a sort of beginning of 2024 update with Gareth Johnson on some super exciting tours that we're going to be running this year. Some are new, some are revival of older tours that we've been wanting to bring back for some time. Let's get right into it. All right, so welcome to, I think this is Season 2, Episode 5 of the Young Pioneer Podcast, and I'm very excited to have YPT founder and... Wait, are you YPT founder and CEO? Okay, and I'm very excited to have YPT founder and CEO Gareth Johnson, also known as Gaz, back on the podcast. It's 2024. We've rung in the new year, and I thought it'd be appropriate to have him on and talk about the tour that he and I just did together, and also talk about a lot of the exciting things that are coming up for YPT in 2024. So, Mr. Johnson, thank you for being back on the Young Pioneer Podcast.
It is absolutely my pleasure to be back, and I'd definitely like to talk about the mammoth 30-day tour that we just finished, and will soon be re-added for the end of next year. I really enjoyed it, but I've also written extensively on it, and it seems that lots of people have been writing about us as well. There have been people that have tried to deconstruct the tour, see if it could be done cheaper, see if we're the cheapest option in town, and the short option is we are the cheapest option in town, because quite frankly, when you visit these islands, it's a lot easier when you're renting a bus for 10 people, or it's a lot easier when you're going on a boat for 10 people. It's a lot easier to do a lot of this stuff, but also it's a lot of fun, and everyone who was on it had a really good time, and this is definitely one of my favourite places in the world, and I'm excited that we'll do it again next year, but I'm equally as excited that we're going to do it in the summer and lead it into Papua New Guinea. Is that not correct?
Well, in case there's any ambiguity, what Gareth is referring to is the Least Visited Countries Tour, which he and I just led together. It was the 2023-2024 tour. It kicked off in Palau in December 15th, made its way through the Marshall Islands, Kiribati, Nauru, Tuvalu, Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, Cook Islands, and Solomon Islands. I probably missed something in there too, and finished January 13th in the Solomons. So it's, again, there's been so much enthusiasm and interest in the Least Visited Countries Tour, again, since we've just started running it again for the first time since 2020, that we're going to be running it twice in 2024. We're going to run it once in the summer, so we're looking at, I think right now it's not up for booking yet, but it will be very soon. In fact, by the time this podcast is up, it very well may be up for booking, but we're looking to run that July 22nd through August 12th. Will be the Least Visited Countries Summer Tour.
And more excitingly, or perhaps equally excitingly, on August the 13th, one of our yearly jaunts to Papua New Guinea begins. It links correctly with our Mount Hagen tour, and the Mount Hagen tour also links with Bougainville, which is probably going to be the world's next newest country. So this is all, super exciting stuff. If you've got the time and the money, this is a great way to knock off 16, 18 countries. And we've slightly refined it as well. I think, if I remember correctly, we're losing the Cook Islands, but we're gaining Vanuatu. Is that correct?
Yeah, every time that we've done Least Visited, there's always been some sort of variation. So for summer, yes, we're going to lose Cook Islands and we're going to add Vanuatu back. We've done Vanuatu in the past. This last one, we lost Vanuatu, put in Cook Islands, but now we're kind of going back to the classic LVC itinerary for this one.
But we're always looking to expand as well, and as well as you well know, as I know, we're looking at stuff like the Pitcairns, we're looking at French Polynesia, we're looking at Tahiti. I mean, this is YPT's little zone.
I don't want to give away too much, but we're currently working on something of a secret project right now that will hopefully open up some much easier routes to some even harder to reach destinations like Niue, Wallace and Fortuna, and maybe even Pitcairn by air, which is super interesting.
That is, maybe we've spoken too much, but yeah. So these are all really exciting things, and again, we like to innovate with these things, and again, these are going to be more than just. We realise some people are real country collectors, but we know that there's a whole lot of you out there that also like to see stuff that doesn't have a UN flag next to it.
Absolutely. And so just actually going back, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I mean, how was returning to the least visited countries after a 3-year hiatus? Was there anything different, new, or was it much of the same? I obviously have some observations, but I wanted to open up the floor to you to go first.
I think, as they say in Thailand, same but different. I mean, it was, I've been going there for so long now that I'm quite a lot going back and meeting friends. But we for me, what was most interesting in, I've now got so involved in the regions that I'm doing other projects now. So I'm now involved with the Nauru Soccer Federation, and I got to sign a deal and make the deal about that. So that's something YPT are going to be very much involved with as we set up perhaps even a tournament to be held in the Pacific Islands, which should happen during the summer when we're there visiting. But it was good. I think we made some innovations this year as well. Having New Year in Tuvalu, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, both mine and your favourite place in the world, was a great idea. Shortening how long we stayed in Nauru was good. And I think we did just about the right time in each place. But we also learned a lot because we hadn't been there in 3 years. So I think the main takeaway is every time we do this, every time we go back, the next year's even better. You learn, and there's not a boring day, but we also what people don't realise, and one person on tour said to me was, wow, we're seeing all these new countries, but it's also, you get to go to the beach some days, you get to be a bit of a holiday. So in some respects it's not exactly like a classic YPT tour, but it is. You still get to do some other cool shit. So I'm all about that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I don't want to harp on too much and say, well, YPT has the connections and everything, so you shouldn't go alone. But it is true. I mean, you can show up in Tuvalu by yourself and kind of just, again, you can try to book a hotel ahead of time. You very well may not get a response. You can just show up and walk off the runway and walk down the main street and try to just get yourself set up in a hotel and see what you can find. But the reality is that a lot of these places require sort of face-to-face interaction and grow those relationships and have the connections to really make interesting things happen and make your time in the countries worthwhile. And I think that's the unique thing that we offer, that we've been there so much that we've grown a solid network across the islands of people and local guides who make each place even more interesting.
Well, we had dinner with the Taiwanese ambassador who put on a barbecue for us on the beach. You're not going to get that normally. And actually, what happens every single year as well, and this barbecue is a good example, is every single year other people go off and do it by themselves, and they end up in these countries stuck. And they go, oh, can we join you today? And we're fine about that. We let them, obviously have to pay a little bit to join us, but people end up stuck and still joining our parts of the tour whenever they see us or jumping on and getting some advice. So we've seen it every single year. People kind of lost and needing our help. But we're nice people. We help. But, I look at it and I know they're not getting as good an experience on the whole trip. And that's just, that's a fact. These are not places that are indie tour friendly yet.
Moving right along, and let's I think this is kind of going now sort of back to classic YPT. So what I want to talk about coming up is our Belarus Exclusion Zone Spring Tour. That's going to happen from May 27th to May 30th. Belarus is open for tourism. Did it close for tourism during COVID?
Belarus was closed like every. I think actually they might have been one of the few countries that sort of stayed open, but it became impossible to go there. We've got a couple of Belarus ones. I mean, the main Belarus one we're doing is the back in the USSR one, which is in August, and that starts August the 14th, and that has us doing all the classic Belarus things, but also going to the exclusion zone, exploring Minsk. And since the political things that have gone on there, it's become really hard to do visas or to get flights into lots of these parts of the world. So we're actually travelling there overland from Estonia. So this is how we've got around that. We've managed to keep the costs relatively low, and we've also got to link this tour with Kaliningrad. Why are we doing these now? At the end of last year, we had a vote on where people wanted us to do tours to, and Belarus and the Russian Federation were up there. We realised this has been a bit of a political hot potato for a while, but we're apolitical as a company, and this is what we've had people expressing they want to do. So we're really excited to go back to Belarus. The exclusion zone, if you've been to Chernobyl, this is a perfect place to go and see. And obviously you can't go to Chernobyl now for obvious reasons. So if you've got interest in the whole nuclear element and everything that happened in Chernobyl, then this is definitely one you want to come and join us on.
Yeah, I was going to add, with Chernobyl off the table at the moment, I think it's kind of, for anybody who saw the HBO series on Chernobyl, you're probably aware that it was scientists in Belarus who very quickly became aware of the disaster that had happened nearby, and I think 66% or something of Belarus was in some way contaminated by the fallout from Chernobyl. So there is, and it does in fact have its own exclusion zone that, much like Pripyat, is sort of stuck in time, left as it was. So it's got all kinds of Soviet relics and artifacts, and so it's definitely a great alternative while Chernobyl is off the table. I also wanted to add that Belarus has announced a 30-day visa-free entry policy for many countries, so that's also made traveling to Belarus a little easier.
So there's stuff like that. Belarus and Russia, to a large extent, are trying to sort of open themselves up for tourism. Russia's doing online visa for a lot of people now, not British people, not Americans, for obvious sort of political reasons, but travelling to both places is becoming much easier. And Belarus, for me, is I think it's my 100th country I visited, if I remember correctly. It's one of my favourites. It's always been one of my favourites. Travelling around the capital, travelling around Minsk and seeing the other parts of the country, there's so much Soviet elements to it, so much new elements to it, and it's obviously, from a contemporary political point of view, it's a very interesting place to be, wherever you sit on the divide.
Okay, and so you were talking about the Back in the USSR tour for Belarus, which very conveniently ties into our Kaliningrad post-Soviet exclave tour. That's also in August 10th to the 14th. And just so I get this correctly, I want to get my history correct. Kaliningrad was formerly Königsberg and was seized by the Soviet Union. What's that?
Post-Soviet exclave tour.
Okay. It was seized by the Soviet Union following the defeat of Nazi Germany, and thereafter it became a secretive exclave which housed the Russian Baltic Sea Fleet. So this is our inaugural tour to Kaliningrad, is that correct?
Yes, our inaugural tour. We've kind of looked at doing stuff there before. I think we did do one many years ago, but this is our first foray back into Russia. We did it when we were a little bit more active in the Soviet arena. But Kaliningrad's a real interesting place. It was a spoil of war, and it's an exclave, so it's completely separated from the rest of the Russian Federation. But obviously, back in the day, it wasn't, because it was connected to the old Soviet Union, and at that time nobody thought Soviet Union was ever going to end. So it's this strange little place. We actually start the tour in Poland, and then we travel overland into Kaliningrad, and then we exit into the Baltic states, into Estonia, and then that leads us into being able to go back into Belarus. So it's a really interesting. So back in the day, it was sort of a little bit easier to visit here, and it was obviously a little bit more in vogue to visit Kaliningrad, and it was very popular as a sort of gateway into going into Russia, but not going full into the Russian Federation. So it's a really interesting place with great ancient history, but like I say, a more contemporary 20th century and 21st century history as well. And it's the front line of everything that's happening at the moment. So we'll get a glimpse of the Baltic Sea Fleet and remnants of the Third Reich, remnants of the Soviet Union, and then lots of contemporary Russian elements too. So I mean, this is a really interesting, really cool tour, and it's done in the summer, so you're not getting the absolute worst of Russian weather.
Absolutely. And I guess my question is, I mean, so obviously this was a very secretive place during the Soviet Union times, but what has changed sort of globally and militarily for Russia that tourists are now allowed to visit Kaliningrad? Do you know?
Well, I mean, Russia in general, I mean, they used to have many secret cities. Russia overall has just opened a lot. And I think, at some point as well, they saw the economic opportunities, because lots of things are cheaper in Russia. So when things were better politically, they wanted to open this and let people kind of come in and see. But I mean, it's open by Russian standards, so you can go in. You're not going to be followed or anything like that. But it's still militarily very important, and it's still very much Russia. It might be surrounded by Western nations pretty much, but you'll see the Russian flags everywhere. You'll see their side of the propaganda war and everything like that. But again, it's also extremely safe to be there, and there's no it's fine to visit there. It's like anywhere else. You go there and you follow the rules, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to add, probably given its proximity to the rest of Western Europe, I would say that probably mitigates any concerns travelers might have in terms of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and how it relates to.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not linked to that, and I mean, to be honest, it's one of those people you could ask, how safe is it to visit Russia right now, in general. How safe is it to visit certain places in general? If World War III kicks off, we're not going to be safe anywhere, quite simply. And obviously when it comes to safety and things like that, everyone can do their own research and kind of decide what they view is acceptable for them. We don't claim and never will claim to replace the advice that governments give and travel warnings that exist and the like. But you know, we also take people to Syria and Lebanon and other sort of places. So, you know, we're dealing with a different kind of cat.
Absolutely. And, well, I think that's a good segue. Speaking of the military, in September, we are returning to SOFEX, or the Special Operations Forces Exhibition and Conference, which is held every 2 years in Jordan's Special Economic Zone, Aqaba. I had the pleasure of joining YPT in 2022, and we're headed back there this September. Do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about SOFEX?
I would love to. So this is without doubt one of my favourite tours. We're helped out by a very good local partner. This is not a tour that is open to tourists. We visit as delegates, essentially. But you know what? I'm not even going to start with the SOFEX part. We do, I think 5 full days touring Jordan as well. And the Jordan part of this tour is worth doing just by itself. We do Jordan. We do Petra, we do the capital, we do the car museum, the war museums. Obviously, there's a lot of contemporary stuff there at the moment. Jordanians are extremely friendly. You can drink in Jordan legally. There are bars. There's a very good Irish bar, if I remember correctly. It's a real fun place to be. We tend to attract good groups there. We've added the Dead Sea to it now as well, which is an extra that wasn't on our last itinerary. This one isn't up yet, but it's going to be up imminently. But then we finish with the main kicker of the tour, which is this exhibition actually goes on for 5 days. There's military equipment from all over the world, governments from all over the world visiting. We call this the Art of War, or the Business of War tour, and it really is. You get to see how the global military industrial complex works, whatever your feelings, whether they be positive or negative. If you're just into guns and tanks and planes and all that kind of stuff, it's really cool. Sometimes there's even the opportunity to fire guns there and stuff like that. It's really cool. I mean, we've got pictures, we've got videos that emphasise this a lot more. We're still in the process of putting this tour up, but again, I'm pretty sure it will be up by the time this podcast is out. Check out our explanation. Check out our pictures and videos. This is really cool. It's another one we really own. I just did EDEX, the Egypt Defence Exposition, last December. I'm looking at one in Saudi Arabia at the moment as well. This is an area we're really interested in. Again, it sounds very niche, but last time we had a big group of people because it's kind of niche, and there are sort of very interesting scholarly elements to it, but there's also I'm a guy, I kind of like looking at tanks and guns. I'm not gonna try and reinvent the wheel on this.
Yeah, I must confess I was pretty excited when we went to the shooting range and they were taking AR-15s and Glocks right fresh out of the boxes, and we got to do target practice. And it also opens up the door for a lot of just really interesting opportunities, because we might be attending, and probably very likely a large amount of the group are not military or affiliated with any military in any way. But most of the most of the exhibitors there are still friendly. I mean, I remember I had several conversations with suppliers who made housing units and tents for extreme weather and things of that nature. Just based on the fact that I was with the travel companies, so they were still interested in talking about it. I found myself at a luncheon with a colonel from the 3,000 strong army of Comoros, and he sat across from me, and I didn't have to put on airs and say I was military or anything like that. He was very interested in the fact that I was a travel agent, and we had a wonderful conversation, and interesting conversation about the military in Comoros and why he was there. And so it just opens the door to these kind of one-of-a-kind experiences.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people always talk about wanting to get off the beaten track and stuff like that, and that can mean many things. It can mean going to the desert of Berta Will and unclaimed lands. lands or going to the least visited countries in the world, visiting the northeast of North Korea, or it could be going to somewhere like here where you're not visiting as a tourist, you're visiting as a delegate and you're treated as a delegate. And you're not there, people kind of, you go to Egypt during, pyramids and everyone's running after you, Bangkok, whatever, people are running after you as a tourist, it's sort of cash cow thing. Here, you're visiting as a delegate and people will tell you some cool stuff and you get to ask about some of these weapons and, some of it is very cool, some of it is very scary just to see how big a business war is as well. And I think, everybody has an opinion about events that are going on in the world right now, and, that's fair enough. But it's also, it's interesting if you've got an opinion to actually go and see how it works and why it works and whether something should work and something shouldn't. Again, we're not going there as any political statement, but, education or knowledge is power, as they say. So this it's a very cool thing to see. It's a very interesting eye-opener as well.
Absolutely. And all right, moving right along. It'll always be Burma to me, Gareth. I'm kidding. Obviously, I'm talking about YPT's return to Myanmar. I think it's been quite a few years since we've been there. We're coming back in a pretty big way with a 10-day tour in October 14th through 24th. The tour will kick off in Yangon and make its way through Bagan and Naypyidaw. And the tour highlight being the Thadangut Festival. I probably just butchered that pronunciation, but it's also known as the...
I think you probably did as good as I would do.
Okay, but it's known to us English speakers as the Lighting Festival. So for 3 days, Buddhists celebrate to welcome the Buddha and his disciples by enlightening and filling the streets and public buildings with electric bulbs and candles and lanterns.
Yeah, pretty much. So funny enough, when you said, speaking of military, I'll segue on to the next part. I assumed you were going on to Myanmar then. But yes.
Yes. Yeah, kind of a missed opportunity there. But yes, of course, if we're talking about military juntas.
Indeed. So we previously did Myanmar many years ago, but funnily enough, we did it during what was the golden period. Myanmar went up to 10 million tourists per year, which was even more than Cambodia gets, just to give some context or an example. So it was very heavily touristified, and this came after years and years of it being an absolute backwater. I speak to my friends there, and in 2010 it was €500 just to get a cell phone. Just to buy one. They were really separated from the world. They opened up, they kind of democratized. Things have changed now, and obviously, we're apolitical, we don't make statements about these things, but it's now under military rule again. There is an element of civil war in the country as well, which means that now that less than 1 million people visit per year, so it's kind of gone back to being off the grid. I went there on a research trip recently. I met with our local partners. People are really hungry to have tourism back there, and they want to be showing the beauty and wonder of their country. There are some places that are dangerous that we avoid, obviously, but it's much like other spots in the world where, a good lion's share of the places are safe. There are regional conflicts in some areas. We stay away from that. We make sure it's an incredibly safe tour. But, the fact that so many people are staying away, we know our pioneers were adventurous. For us, this is the perfect time to visit. And as well as the festival, for those, familiar with Buddhist-type festivals, there are similar ones at this time of year held in Thailand and in Cambodia. But you'll be seeing this one with much less tourists around. And we also do some very YPT type stuff. We visit the brand new capital that is essentially a fucking ghost town. And it's, got these eight-lane highways that some would argue double up as military sort of deals. They've got all the embassies to move there. Again, some have argued this has been moved from Rangoon or Yangon or Rangoon, however you want to call it, to avoid protests. Some have said it's to reduce traffic and overspill with Rangoon having such a big population. But there's lots of other... So I went there and did a big research trip there, and I found a lot of cool stuff. I found, the street food and the nightlife in Chinatown in Yangon. There's a really cool nightclub, stroke bar, stroke restaurant called Thor, the heart of Rangoon. The circular railway in Yangon, that's another super, super cool thing. And then, we know where to go in all these places. We know a lot of off the beaten track stuff. Some of the stuff's more well known, but we put this tour up, it's already proving really popular. And again, this is another place where it's kind of hard now to do it by yourself. Particularly if you want to travel and see the new capital, you want to travel to the other cities, you do have to keep safety in mind. And, it's now's the perfect time to visit Myanmar or Burma, whatever you want to call it, on a group tour. We feel we've got it. We've got a perfect itinerary. We've been working on it. I did the research trip in November, so we've been working on it since then, so a good couple of months. We feel we've got a great price and a great itinerary, and our local partners are absolutely wonderful as well. So we're super confident about this. And for me personally, hopefully there'll be a nice group. If there's not, I'm just excited to be going back. It's a part of the world I really like, and anyone who's not been there, if you're counting countries or ticking off your UN countries, can come join us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just second that. Myanmar is one of my favorite countries. It's a wonderful. I mean, it's where South Asia meets Southeast Asia, and that's really reflected in the culture and the food, and it's wonderful. I think maybe some people might overlook it, thinking it's maybe not dissimilar from Vietnam or Cambodia or whatever, but it really is very singular, and I'm looking forward to going back eventually when I can. So
indeed,
we were.
I was just going to second your point on that. I mean, do not underestimate what a meeting of cultures this is. You're walking down the street, you can get really good Indian food, and then there's Thai type noodles and their own Burmese fusion dishes, and there's a Chinatown there. I mean, this is but do not underestimate just how much of a fusion Myanmar is. It's not just another nameless part of Southeast Asia. But sorry, I interrupted you. Carry on.
No, that's it. And so, speaking of very YPT things and everything, and sort of YPT's special access to places and people, I'm sitting here in my office and I'm hanging on my sort of coat rack is a baseball cap bearing the Eritrean flag. And the second part of this podcast is actually going to be an interview with one of our local partners, Tomas, in Eritrea, recorded during YPT's Horn of Africa tour last May. I mean, I don't know too many people or even news agencies or tour companies that get to do an interview with an Eritrean basically on the street. And so I think this is for me. I was pretty proud to get this interview, and I'm very excited to share it with our listeners. So, do you have any?
Well, just my last little tidbit would be about that. It would be how many people get to say and do these kind of things, and it shows that not just with the tour side, but with every other angle, even the podcast, we're thinking outside the box, and we're living this. We're not just, again, that's why we have all these great contacts, because we're living and working with these people. We're not just in and out, just sort of counting numbers. We're involved in these countries in many different ways, and I'm really excited. I've not heard this interview yet, so Eritrea is, again, one of my favourite places I've been. Such a unique place, and very cool one for us to do. And also, my last one on our destinations. We've still got more destinations we're adding. There's also one particular secret one that if you want to come or you want to know about it, you've got to have been on a tour before, and you have to email me or contact me directly. And that's my last little tidbit on that.
All right, great. Get in touch with Gareth directly if you're privileged enough to have his number or direct contact information. And so, on that note, Gareth, thank you very much for coming back on the Young Pioneer podcast and going over all the exciting things we have coming up in 2024. And so, thus ends segment 1 of this episode of the Young Pioneer podcast, and I'm going to throw it over to my interview with our local partner Tomas in Eritrea, recorded in May 2023 during our Horn of Africa tour. And that was our interview with YPT CEO and founder Gareth Johnson. Okay, so as you all know, anybody who's listening to this podcast is aware, we've been slowly making our way through a series of audio interviews that I conducted whilst on the YPT May 2023 Horn of Africa tour. We've previously heard my interviews with our partners in Djibouti and Somaliland, and today I'm very excited as we're finally releasing my interview with Tomas, who is one of our local partners and a tour guide in Eritrea. Of the countries visited on our Horn of Africa tour, Eritrea may be one of the most politically sensitive, notoriously hard to visit and communicate with, as some have called it the North Korea of Africa. Eritrea is a tiny country situated on the Red Sea with South Sudan to its north, Ethiopia to the east, and Djibouti to the south. Notoriously hard to visit and communicate with, some have called it the North Korea of Africa. I want to reiterate that YPT is apolitical, and we encourage travelers who visit our destinations to see them for themselves and draw their own conclusions. For a little bit more background, we could spend a lot of time discussing the region's ancient history and various kingdoms of the Horn of Africa, which encompassed modern-day Eritrea, but Eritrea, as we know it today, was created as an Italian colony in the 19th century, with Asmara as its capital. After World War II, Ethiopia annexed Eritrea, and a long war for Eritrean independence ensued from 1961 to 1991. After the collapse of the communist Ethiopian government in 1991, a referendum took place in which its people voted for Eritrea to be an independent state. Eritrea officially celebrated its first anniversary of independence on May 24th, 1994, and it was during Independence Day celebrations in 2023 that I recorded the following interview with our local partner in Eritrea, Tomas. Okay, I'm sitting here at the Asmara Star Hotel in Asmara, Eritrea, and I'm with Tomas Tedros, who's one of our local partners here in Eritrea, and we've just spent a wonderful couple of days together celebrating National Day. Is it National Day or Independence Day?
Independence Day.
Okay, Independence. We've spent a wonderful few days together with our group celebrating Independence Day here in Eritrea. But I'll just jump right into it. So, for anybody that's not familiar with Eritrea and considering coming here, how would you describe the country to someone who hasn't been here, and what do you think it offers in terms of what are the main reasons to visit the country?
All right, thank you. Eritrea is a small country in the Horn of Africa, and it's it's neighboring with Sudan to the west, Ethiopia to the south, and Djibouti to the east. It's a small country which got its independence in 1991. And when it comes to tourism, Eritrea can afford anything any tourist will like to see. The landscapes, the cultural tour, the people, the cafes, the Italian heritage, and pretty much basically everything any tourist can explore the country easily. And
tell me a little bit more about Eritrea's recent history in the last century and in the 1800s. You could just kind of give me a hagiography. No, you're good.
Eritrea as a country was the name was given when the Italians first came to this region in 1880s, late 1880s. To be specific, in 1889. Then they came through Asep. This is one of the big ports. We have two ports at the moment, and one is Massawa and the other one is Asep. So the Italians, they first came through Asep, Port Asep, then they moved to Massawa, then all the way to the highlands of Eritrea. And during the scramble for Africa, Italy conquered Eritrea in 1889 to 1941. Then from 1941, the Second World War started in Europe, and the British took over. They came through Sudan, and they stayed here for about 15 years. Then the British, they decided to federate Eritrea with Ethiopia, and we were considered as a 14th province of Ethiopia in late 1960s. And this was not accepted by the Eritrean people, so we started the liberation war against Haile Selassie, or former Ethiopia leader, and we continued the war with Mengistu, which is the Soviet favorite leader of Ethiopia, and we got our independence in 1991.
Okay. And so let's just talk about the tour itinerary. So, we land here in Asmara, and I just have to say it's one of the most sort of wonderfully unique cities. I mean, a lot of countries in Africa, a lot of the buildings that were put up during their various colonial periods have either been destroyed or not kept. But Asmara, there's amazing architecture from the Italian colonial period that's been well maintained. It almost feels like being in Italy in the 1940s or something. It's completely unlike any other city in the world. Let's talk about what can people expect to see on a Asmara city tour. What are some of the highlights?
Asmara, for newcomers, it feels like you are in one of the old Italian cities. When the Italians decided to stay here, their plan was to make Eritrea as one of the Italian province. So pretty much whatever you see in Italy, you will see it here as well. All the historical and architectural buildings, the infrastructure, everything, the cafes, the markets, the mosque, the church, everything is similar to what you see in Italy. And that's it.
And is Eritrea proud of the Italian heritage? I mean, because again, you've maintained these buildings, and a lot of people here still speak Italian.
Yes, we are proud of our heritage, and nowadays the Italian language is more practiced by the old people. Now English is overtaking the global language, so most of the people nowadays, especially the young ones, they speak English. We use English as a third language. The official language is Tigrinya and Arabic, but we use English as a third language. So most of the young people, they speak English.
And we don't just see Asmara. We actually travel to the largest port city, which is Massawa, and spend a night there. And what can people expect to see when traveling through the countryside of Eritrea? I mean, it was very unique because I wasn't expecting to see cactuses or cacti on the way down, and I think those were brought by the Italians, right?
Yes. Well, the landscape is amazing. Asmara, as a city, is located about 2,400 meters above sea level, and it's about 115 kilometers away from the sea. So the scenery there is amazing, lots of mountains, and you will be in Massawa within 3 hours and 30 minutes, and you will see these old landscapes from 2,400 meters up to zero, which is the sea level. And Massawa is one of my favorite cities. The Italians also did there a very good job, but you feel like you are in one of the coastal countries or coastal areas. Like you feel like you have this Arabian feeling, because the Ottomans, they were here for a very long time, and they added their own architectural building to Massawa. And after the Ottomans were defeated, the Egyptians came here and they added their own architecture as well. And when the Italians came, they did not destroy any of these two architectures, but they added their own taste to the already existing buildings. So Massawa is completely different from what you experience in Asmara. This is why we always advise people to add at least Asmara and Massawa on their itinerary.
And you were telling me, again, we're talking about the architecture of the country, which is probably, as I was saying, it's one of the most unique and amazing features of Eritrea. You mentioned last night that there are actually some efforts to make Asmara a UNESCO World Heritage Site, right? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, Asmara already is a World Heritage Site. The whole city. We have more than 4,500 different historical, colonial, and modernistic architectures. So at the moment, Asmara as a city is completely a World Heritage Site, the whole city.
It already is designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site? That's happened?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it is already a World Heritage Site. Now, another effort is happening at the moment, and the plan is to preserve Massawa as a World Heritage Site as well.
That's great. Okay, so when that happens, there'll be there'll be reconstruction efforts on the buildings and to renovate them and everything. Yeah.
Yes. As you have experienced it, most of the buildings are in very bad shape. Then at least if you can preserve those, do the maintenance work, the paint job, the plastering, the maintenance with everything, I think you can preserve a lot of things in the old town.
Yeah, because I mean, you go to a lot of cities, even in the Horn of Africa. I mean, for instance, Mogadishu, there's a tremendous amount of investment coming in and new buildings being built. If Eritrea reaches a point where things change a little bit and there is some more foreign investment and a bigger foreign presence in the country, you don't think that the skyline of Asmara will change? You think that the government will try to keep it as it is?
Yes, we will keep it as it is. Asmara is a very big city compared to Massawa, and we have already preserved the central part of Asmara, which is very rich in Italian architecture and many different buildings. So if the city is expanding, of course it will expand in the future. All the skyline and different architecture will be put in a different place, not within the center of the city.
So can you tell me about the significance of May 24th, 1991? What exactly happened and why we were here yesterday celebrating 32 years of an independent Eritrea?
Yes, the story goes back when Eritrea was forced to go for independence. What happened is, from the start we were an independent country, but when the Italians first came and during the scramble for Africa again, they marked all the African borders, and Eritrea was considered as one province of Italy at that time. Then, when the Italians were overthrown by the British during Second World War, they came through Sudan. Strategically, they found Eritrea to be very suitable for the Horn of Africa and for the Middle East. So their intention was to have a big base here, the British military base and American base, so that they can control the Middle East from the Red Sea. And in order to make this, they have to make another political influence in Ethiopia, which is, at that time, Haile Selassie was the king of Ethiopia, and he was highly favored by the queen. So they decided to make Eritrea part of Ethiopia, and they said, during the Italian time, we had many factories, and at that time, the economy in Africa was controlled by South Africa and Eritrea only. Then the British, they found this very suitable, and they dismantled all the factories and whatever they can get in Eritrea, and they sold it to their former colonies like Pakistan, India, South Africa, and many British colonies at that time. So they made Eritrea a very poor nation within few years, and they decided to federate Eritrea with Ethiopia, and we were considered the 14th province of Ethiopia when Haile Selassie came to power. So this was not accepted by the Eritrean people, and even though we asked for a solution, but the United Nations and international committee was controlled by the British and the Americans, so nobody heard us. And because we were silenced, we started the liberation war to get it for our own benefit, because we are a different nation from the start. We are two different people from the beginning, and this is why we started the war for independence in September 1st, 1961. So the war started in 1961, and it continued for 30 years to get the independence. And the independence happened in May 24, 1991. So we fought Haile Selassie when he was in power. Then another group started in Ethiopia, which is Mengistu Haile Mariam, and he overthrown Haile Selassie in Ethiopia. Then we continued the war with Mengistu as well. And Mengistu was highly favored by the Soviet Union and heavily supplied by the Soviet Union at the time. And we defeated this brutal regime in Ethiopia, and we got our independence in 1991.
Okay, so for foreigners that are in the country on Independence Day, can you just explain what are the traditional celebrations that happen around Asmara, and what can people expect to see?
Well, the traditional celebration starts on May 23rd, and the independence is May 24th, and it continues up to May 25. So basically 3 days of holidays. But the celebration begins in mid of May, because people come out to the streets, express themselves, and there will be a lot of dancing on the streets, sometimes carnival happening. All the factories and the products that we produce will be shown on the main street, and people can experience this. So basically people come out to the streets and express the happiness and the joy that they have received from this independence. This is the experience that you will see.
And then on the day, the government holds a big event at Asmara Stadium, which is quite. There are a lot of people from the government. There are foreign dignitaries. The president gives a speech. There's quite a bit of choreography. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, this is the formal or official celebration that is done at the stadium, and mostly members of the international community and people from government positions and some of the local representatives, they will attend this celebration. And the show is pretty much from the historical background, how much blood was shed to get the independence, just some shows that expresses the colonial time, expressions of the challenges that the liberation fighters passed through to get the independence, and the benefits of the independence that we are now at the moment experiencing. So they add this all test together, and we always hope for the future. And this is where the president comes and gives a speech about the current situation that is happening around the world, and specifically about this region. And you will get the idea of the trajectory of the country, where it is heading. This is basically what is happening at the official May 24th.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had the privilege yesterday of watching the proceedings from a bar that was attached to the Asmara bowling alley, and we were watching it with locals, and everybody was sort of there with rapt attention, listening to the president's speech, which was was quite stirring, to say the least. Okay, my final question to any YPT customers who have been considering going to Eritrea or booking a trip with us to come to Eritrea. What's your final word? Give us a sign off. You're looking forward to seeing them, looking forward to welcoming them here in Eritrea, and why should they come?
Any foreigner who wants to come and visit the country is welcome, both as an agent and by the people as well. The people of Eritrea is very friendly, and we are always working so hard to promote tourism in Eritrea. And working with you guys was such a blessing and a different experience, because it's a mid-range group, not a big one, but on this tour, 33 people altogether from different nationalities. So you get the experience of different ideas from different nationalities and different experiences, which is good for the country and for us as well. So we are very much welcome, and we had such a blessing and a different experience, which I'm grateful to know you guys. So thank you for visiting us, and you are always welcome to come back again.
Thank you for having us, and looking forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Listen and hopefully join us on a destination like Eritrea and draw your own conclusions. Speaking of traveling to Eritrea, in May we have our annual Horn of Africa trip, which runs May 14th to the 25th and covers Djibouti, Somaliland, Eritrea, and Somalia. So if you're interested in seeing this incredible region for yourself, head on over to youngpioneertourist.com, send us an email, and we'll get you set up. Remember, in 1888, it took Nellie Bly 72 days to travel from New York City around the world and back again to New York. Of this, she said simply, "It's not very much for a woman to do who has the pluck, energy, and independence, which characterize many women in this day of push and get there." And it's that kind of pluck, energy, independence, push, and get there that inspire what we do here at YPT. So if you like this podcast, obviously please share it, like it, repost, add a review. It's all appreciated, but also please head over to youngpioneertours.com and check out our itineraries. Send us an inquiry for a tour that interests you. I'm Justin Martell, and this has been another episode of the Young Pioneer Podcast.
Porte-parole.